The candles sitting on the table that evening were the ones my mother had pressed into my hands the day we moved into this house. Tall ivory tapers she'd found in a little shop in Savannah, wrapped carefully in tissue paper and nestled inside a cedar box. She'd said, "Save these for a moment worth holding on to." 25 years together. I figured that was reason enough. I'd spent most of that afternoon in the kitchen, a whole roasted chicken with fresh herbs I'd clipped from the garden out back, the garlic mashed potatoes my husband had requested at every single anniversary dinner since our 3rd year of marriage, a lemon tart sitting in the refrigerator, waiting. Our daughter had texted around 4 in the afternoon to say she was bringing wine. Our son called to confirm the time, 7 o'clock. Everyone around the table the way it had always been. I was straightening the centerpiece when my phone buzzed, a text from my husband. "Running a little behind. Go ahead and pour drinks without me." I placed the phone face down on the counter and returned to the flowers. I already knew, even in that quiet moment, that something was heading toward me. I'd known for 8 months. What I hadn't known was that he'd pick this particular night to finally say it out loud. He came through the door at 20 past 7 with his jacket draped over his arm and a bottle of champagne I hadn't asked for. He kissed me on the cheek the way a person kisses out of habit rather than feeling, leaving nothing behind. Our daughter was already at the table. Our son was pouring water. My husband set the champagne on the counter, looked slowly around the room with an expression I can only describe as a man who has already mentally moved out, and said, "Before we sit down, there's something I need to say." Our daughter glanced up from her phone. Our son set down the pitcher. I stood very still near the head of the table, hands relaxed at my sides, and I waited. "I think we all know things haven't been working for a while," my husband said. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at the candles, the tablecloth, the centerpiece, every corner of the room except the woman who had spent the entire day making it beautiful for him. "I've been thinking seriously about what I want going forward, about the next part of my life, and I think it's time I stop keeping this to myself." My son said, "Dad, I'm in love with someone else." He said it the way you'd mention rain in the forecast. "I have been for a while now, and I think it's better for everyone if I stop pretending that isn't true." The room went quiet in a way that has actual weight to it. I could hear the candle flame shift. I could hear my daughter breathing. "Her name doesn't matter right now," he continued, as though that was somehow a kindness. "What matters is that I've already spoken to an attorney. I want a clean separation. The house will need to be sorted out. My name is on the mortgage and I intend to be fair, but realistically, keeping up this property on a single income isn't going to work." "It's your anniversary," my daughter said. My husband paused. "Today," she said, her voice completely level. "It's your 25th wedding anniversary. You know that, right?" He had the decency to look briefly uncomfortable. There were moments inside a marriage, and I say this as someone who has now lived all the way through one, where you realize the person sitting across from you has been a stranger for longer than you understood. Not a stranger in the dramatic sense, not someone you never really knew. A stranger in the quieter sense, someone who has slowly, gradually stopped letting you into their inner world. You notice it the way you notice a room getting colder. Not all at once, but eventually without any doubt. I had first noticed it the previous March, the way he angled his phone screen away when I walked past. A business trip to Atlanta that came back with no receipts and no stories. A new gym bag carrying a faint trace of perfume that wasn't mine. I didn't confront him. I made an appointment with an attorney instead. My attorney, a woman I'd been referred to by my college roommate who had been through her own version of this, spent our very first meeting asking me one question in about 15 different ways. What do you want the outcome to be? Not what do you want to happen to him, not how do you want him to pay. What outcome for your own life are you working to protect? I sat with that question for 2 full days. Then I called her back and told her my answer. She said, "Good. Now let me tell you about the agreement you signed 25 years ago." I want to say something about the prenuptial agreement because I've noticed people tend to assume those conversations are cold and calculating, that any couple who signs one has already mentally prepared for the marriage to fail before it even begins. That wasn't true for us. My husband had come from a family with real estate holdings, a family business, assets his parents wanted shielded in the event of a worst-case scenario. I understood that completely. I wasn't hurt by it. I read the document, consulted my own attorney, asked my questions, and signed with a clear conscience because I fully intended to stay married. What I remembered, and what he had apparently long since forgotten, was the infidelity clause. It wasn't unusual language for that period. My attorney said she'd seen it many times in agreements drawn up in the 90s, particularly in families with significant assets. In plain terms, if either party engaged in documented infidelity, the betrayed spouse retained primary claim to the marital home and a considerably larger share of joint assets. The clause required documentation, not just accusations, which is precisely why I had spent the previous 8 months doing exactly what I did. A private investigator, recommended by my attorney, a paper trail that was, by the time I sat down at that anniversary dinner, thick enough to be substantial. I had not mentioned any of this to my husband. I stood at the head of the table while he explained, in the measured tone of a man who had rehearsed this speech, that he believed a clean break was the healthiest path for everyone, that he had no intention of making the finances difficult, that he hoped we could handle the end of our marriage like mature adults. Our daughter had pushed her chair back slightly from the table, as if she needed more space to breathe. Our son was watching me, not his father, me, studying my face the way he used to when he was small and unsure of something, looking for a signal about whether to be frightened. I reached down and lifted my handbag from where it hung on the back of my chair. I set it on the table. I unclasped it and took out a manila folder, the kind with a metal clasp at the top, the kind that looks exactly like what it is, which is serious paperwork, and I placed it on the table in front of my plate. My husband stopped talking. "I heard you," I said. My voice was steady. I want to be clear about that. I had worked on being steady. I had stood in front of the bathroom mirror and practiced it because I'd known this conversation was coming. I just hadn't known which night he would finally choose to have it. "I heard you. I want you to know I heard every word, and I appreciate that you decided honesty was the right approach. So I'd like to give you the same." I slid the folder across the table toward him. He looked at it, the way you look at something you don't yet recognize as a threat. "That's a copy," I said. "My attorney has the original. What you're holding is the prenuptial agreement we signed on September 14th, 25 years ago. Specifically, I'd like you to turn to page 7, section 4, paragraph 2. Our daughter was watching him now. Our son hadn't moved. My husband opened the folder with the careful movements of someone trying to appear calm. I watched him find page 7. I watched him read. I know the exact moment he reached the infidelity clause because the rhythm of his reading changed. Slower, then stopping, then going back. "Behind the agreement," I said, "you'll find a set of dated documents, hotel receipts, phone records, and a 14-page report from a licensed investigator. That section is marked with a yellow tab." He was not looking at me. "I've met with my attorney 4 times over the past 8 months," I said. "Everything in that folder has been reviewed and verified. The short version is this. Per the agreement you asked me to sign before we got married, and per the documentation I've now provided, the marital home stays in my name, and the division of our joint assets shifts substantially in my favor." I folded my hands on the table. "I've already spoken to the mortgage company. I've already spoken to the bank." The silence that followed was nothing like the silence when he'd first made his announcement. That silence had been stunned and fragile. This one was entirely different. This was the silence of a man watching everything he'd planned rearrange itself into something he'd never once considered. Our daughter made a sound that was somewhere between a laugh and a sob. Something caught between those two things. some combination of pain and sudden clarity. My husband looked up from the folder. "When did you—" "March," I said, "when you came back from Atlanta." He set the folder down on the table, very slowly. "You've been planning this." "I've been protecting myself," I said, "which is exactly what you should have expected the moment you decided to stop protecting me." He started to say something. Our son stood up. "I don't think there's anything more to discuss tonight." He wasn't shouting. He was calm in the way a person is calm when they've decided that composure will serve them better than anger. Something I'd always hoped he would learn. Not here, not on their anniversary. He looked at his father with an expression I will carry with me for the rest of my life. Not hatred, something closer to grief. The face of someone quietly letting go of a belief they'd held onto for a very long time. "You should leave, Dad." My husband looked toward our daughter. She had turned her face to the window. He gathered the folder, he put on his jacket, he picked up his keys from the counter where he'd set them down an hour earlier, when he'd walked through the door carrying champagne for an anniversary he was already planning to take apart. He paused at the door, and I thought for a moment he might say something. An apology, maybe. An explanation. One last attempt to frame the situation in terms that worked in his favor. He didn't. He left. The door closed. Our daughter reached across the table and took my hand. We ate the chicken cold, the three of us, and we opened the wine she'd brought. At some point during the meal, our son said, "You made the potatoes?" And I said, "Of course I made the potatoes." And the room that had been so unbearably silent became something gentler, something more familiar. Not whole, not that night, but something that had the possibility of becoming whole again. What I know about the 2 weeks that followed comes mostly from what my attorney passed along to me, because I was deliberate about making myself unavailable for negotiation. My husband had contacted a second attorney who confirmed what his own reading of the agreement had already made clear to him. The infidelity clause was airtight, the documentation was thorough, and the prenuptial agreement his own family's lawyer had written 25 years ago, designed specifically to protect his family's assets from me, now worked in precisely the opposite direction. He was not going to get the house. He was not going to get the joint savings account that had been growing for 2 decades, the account that held, among other things, the income I'd earned from my consulting work I had quietly built in the evenings for the past 7 years while he assumed I was watching television. I want to speak to something here, because I know it's a fair thing to wonder about. A woman my age, who spent portions of her marriage as the primary caregiver for 2 children, is not automatically in a position of financial independence the moment a marriage ends. I understood that. I had thought about it the way you think about a fire exit, knowing where it was, making sure I could get to it. The consulting work had started because I missed using my degree, a master's in organizational psychology that I'd set aside when our daughter was born. A nonprofit had offered me a small contract through a mutual connection. I'd taken it, done well, and it had led to more. By the time my marriage was ending, I had built something real, modest, but real. A list of clients, a steady income, a reputation within a small professional community that had nothing to do with being anybody's wife. I wasn't starting over from nothing. I was starting over from somewhere. My husband's girlfriend, and I came to know this through the unavoidable social overlap of living in the same city as someone who has hurt you, had ended things with him approximately 3 weeks after he made his announcement. The details that reached me were vague, but the basic shape of the situation was clear enough. She had believed he was coming with resources, the house, the savings, the stability he had implied was his to offer. When it became apparent that the assets he had described were tied up in a legal matter in which he stood to receive considerably less than he'd expected, the conversation between them had apparently not gone well. What I felt about this is something I'm still working to name. Not satisfaction, exactly, not the clean relief of revenge, something more layered than either of those. A kind of tired recognition that the choices we make about who to trust and why send ripples outward in directions we don't always follow back to where they started. He had trusted her with his plans the same way he had stopped trusting me with his inner life. He had believed her investment in him ran as deep as his own in her. He had made the mistake of confusing desire with commitment. The same mistake, I eventually came to understand, he had been making with me for far longer than the affair. We finalized the divorce 7 months after that anniversary dinner. I stayed in the house. I repainted the hallway a color my daughter helped me select, a warm terracotta that my mother immediately called unexpected but right. I started growing better herbs in the backyard garden, the kind that actually require your attention. I've learned since then that keeping something alive, something that depends on you to notice when it needs water, when it needs more light, when it's struggling in the wrong conditions, is a practice that keeps you honest about where your focus really is. Our son calls on Sundays. Our daughter visits when she can. My relationship with both of them is different now than it was before that night. Not damaged by what happened, but made clearer by it. The way a hard rain clears the air. My former husband called me once, about 4 months after the divorce was finalized. He was polite in the deliberate way of someone who has made a conscious decision to be polite. He said he wanted me to know he didn't hold it against me, the attorney, the prenup, all of it. He said he understood I had been protecting myself. I thanked him for saying so. He asked how I was doing. I told him honestly. I said I was doing well, better than I had expected, in the specific way that happens when you stop waiting for someone else to determine the shape of your life. There was a pause on the line that contained an entire conversation, one neither of us was going to have out loud. Then he said, "I should have paid more attention." I said, "Yes." I said it without anger, without the weight of all those months I had spent being invisible inside my own home. I said it because it was simply true, and because saying it plainly, without anything added around it, was the most honest thing I could give him. It was also, I realized afterward, the most honest thing he had offered me in years. We said goodbye. I went back to the kitchen, where I'd been in the middle of making dinner. The window above the sink was open. Outside, the garden was doing well that year, the rosemary especially, which had survived the previous winter against all reasonable expectation and come back fuller than before. I finished cooking. I ate at my own table, in my own house, in the particular quiet of a life that belongs entirely to you. There is a version of this story that begins with rage, one where I tell you about the nights I couldn't sleep, the hours spent scrolling back through months of messages searching for the moments I should have caught sooner. The afternoon I sat in a parking lot outside my attorney's office and cried hard enough that I had to sit there for 20 minutes before I could drive. That version is also true. All of that happened. But that isn't the story I want to tell you. What I want to tell you about is the folder on the table, about reaching into my handbag, that one small deliberate movement, and placing in front of him the exact document that said, I knew, I prepared, I did not fall apart. Not because I feel nothing, but because I had been given 8 months to decide that the most powerful thing I could do was refuse to be the version of myself he had been counting on, the wife who would cry and plead and negotiate from a place of fear. He had spent months planning his exit. So had I. The difference was that I had read the fine print. 25 years of marriage, and the document that protected me was the one his own family had written. I have turned that irony over in my mind more than once. I have sat with it the way you sit with something that is both painful and, in its own strange way, a little funny. Something that shows you, in its precise, specific details, how fully a life can catch you off guard when you're paying close enough attention. The candles my mother gave me, I still have the rest of them, tucked in the cedar box. I used 2 of them that anniversary night. The others are still wrapped in tissue paper. She told me to save them for something worth remembering. I think I'm still working out what that is, but I'm no longer waiting for someone else to decide when to light them.